Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium live stream. My name is Jessica. I'm the director of the Planetarium, and with me tonight is one of our students who I will let say hi and introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Brayden Slattery. I'm a vocal music education student here at UMD. I cannot talk today. Oh my gosh.
It's been, we talked about this a little bit earlier, it's been a very sleepy day. I definitely don't feel like I've fully woken up all day.
Yeah, I'm about the same. I'm in a weird limbo state of
Yeah,
just
I'm,
tired.
I'm blaming it on the weather.
Yeah,
It's
I
been all
agree.
rainy and
The
icky.
fog is really, really bad right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thankfully for the show tonight, we don't have to worry about the weather because we can simulate the sky in whatever weather we want, which is fantastic. So for our show tonight, we are going to be taking a look at the constellations that you can see up in the November skies. Let me go ahead and get things up and running. Now, as with all of our shows, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Brayden is going to keep an eye on that for me and will let me know if questions come up. Do be aware that there is a little bit of a delay between when you type comments and we see them and respond. So if we don't get to them right away, we will get to your questions by the end. All right, so for anyone who is new to our Constellation live streams, we use this really awesome program called Stellarium. It's free software. There's a link to it down in the video description if you want to go check it out for yourself. But basically, you give it a date, time, and location, and it shows you what the sky looks like. So right now, we are set up for Duluth, Minnesota, since that is where our planetarium is. And we are set for right now. You can see the date down here and time as it's adjusting because this is real time right now. And we already have some pretty dark skies, which I think is also contributing to my feeling sleepy today. The shorter days plus the daylight savings ending, we are getting some very early sunsets now, and my body has not gotten used to that. I don't know if you feel the same, Brayden, but hi Nova.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It's I I'll get out of my class by 4:30 and it's already starting to get dark and I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah.
I do not like this. Yeah.
Yep. Even being here 4 years now, I'm still those early sunsets hit in the winter, and I'm still like, what is this? But it's just a part. It's just a part of living up north. Okay. So, sorry, my phone volume was up for some reason. Let's get to our constellations. And before we actually do constellations, let's take a look around because there are a few other things that are up in the sky right now. We have the moon rising up over in the east. It's just past the full phase. We are in the waning gibbous because we just had the eclipse a few of yesterday. Was it already yesterday? It was already yesterday.
Yeah, it was
Um,
yesterday.
Let me know in the comments if anyone got a chance to see it. I definitely stayed up till 5 a.m., but the clouds just were not letting up, so I did not get a chance to see the eclipse. But let me know if you did. I've seen some really awesome pictures of it, which is very cool. Also up right now, we have, oops, I almost missed it, Mars rising up over in the east, Jupiter and Saturn pretty high up in the south right now. So we've got several planets that you can see. Even the planet Uranus is up, but you need a telescope to see that one. So yeah, lots of fun things. But now let's get into our constellations. We're going to start over here in the north with probably the most familiar set of stars. It is these 7 stars here. This is commonly known as the Big Dipper, where we have the handle and the cup. So the Big Dipper is itself not a constellation, it's an asterism, which means it's a smaller grouping of stars within a larger constellation. In this case, the Big Dipper is the 7 brightest stars in the Greek constellation of Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this out for you so you can see that the Big Dipper here is the kind of tail and part of the body of the bear, but then we have to add in some other stars for the head and the legs. Now, I like starting with the Big Dipper, one, because it is very bright and familiar and easy to find, but for us in the Northern Hemisphere, it's up all the time. It's what we call a circumpolar constellation, or in this case, circumpolar stars, since the Big Dipper is in a constellation, which means you can see it any time of year that you go out. So it's a really great place to start to kind of get your bearings on where the sky or how the sky is oriented, where north is. And as I'm going to show you, there are some tricks that you can do using the Big Dipper to help you find other stars and constellations. So the first one we're going to look for is the companion to the Big Dipper and the Big Bear, which is the Little Dipper and the Little Bear. So the trick for this is we go to our Big Dipper and we take these front two stars. These front two stars are commonly called the pointer stars because if we connect them in a line, they point us to this bright star. This is the star Polaris. You might know it as the North Star. It's called that because, let me fast forward time here. If we watch over the course, that's going a little bit too fast. If we watch over the course of the night, we see all of the stars, I'll go ahead and speed it up again, all of the stars moving across the sky except for Polaris. Our North Star there is always right here in the direction of north. And that's its importance. It's not that it's the brightest star in the sky, it's just the star that doesn't move. And this was important for early navigators because it's a compass in the sky, right? You find the North Star, you know north, and therefore you know your other directions. Let me go ahead and reset time to right now. Oops, reset, there we go. Now, Polaris here is the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, which you can see right here. Now, finding the Little Dipper is a bit trickier than finding the Big Dipper because 4 of the 7 stars in the Little Dipper are very, very dim. You have to have super dark skies and well dark adapted eyes to be able to see them. In fact, I've only seen all of the stars in the Little Dipper once in my life. So if you're having trouble seeing it, that is completely normal. Little Dipper here is also our little bear. There are no extra stars. Just like with the Big Bear, the handle is the tail, but what's different is the body, the entire body of the little bear is the cup of the Little Dipper. And let's turn on some art here so that you can see that. So there is our Big Dipper and Little Dipper and Big Bear and Little Bear. Now, you may have noted or noticed that when I first introduced these constellations, I said that they were the Greek constellations. That's because cultures all over the world have their own sets of constellations. The Greeks are the ones that are most well known, mostly because, one, they wrote things down and shared them, and so they became, well preserved and known all over. But also because when the International Astronomical Union decided to make an official map of the night sky, for the Northern Hemisphere, they primarily picked Greek constellations. I said official in quotes because it's not official in the sense of these are the only or correct constellations. It's just the ones they chose to make their map. But yes.
Oh, I was gonna say we have a question. How far was Polaris from north during the time of Homer's Odyssey, around 600 to 1000 BC? I would not know, so I'm gonna leave this to you.
Good question. 1,000 years. It would have been pretty. 1,000 years BC. That's a little past a full precession wobble. So it wouldn't have been exactly at Polaris, but it would have been near. I don't know exactly. Um, if we have time at the end, one of the things you can do with this program is actually go back in time. And we could go back in time and look, but I will save that for the end in case we have time for that. Otherwise, I want to kind of stay on to night sky. And I'll explain more what I mean about the precession and stuff if we have time to go back to that. That is a good question, though, and an interesting question. But I was talking about other cultural constellations. So every culture around the world has their own sets. A lot of them do share the same or similar stars because they're typically made of the brightest stars in the sky, but they're interpreted differently. So, for example, looking a little bit closer to home, the Ojibwe, they also see a couple of animals in the sky, but they're not bears. Unfortunately, I can't share much about those constellations just yet. There are rules in place of when you can talk about them, and we have to wait for the first or for snow to be on the ground to be able to really discuss those. But another example, so I can give you one that I can talk about, in why am I blanking on Norse? That's the word. In the Norse constellations, the Big Dipper that we know it to them is the big wagon or the man's wagon, and the little one is the woman's wagon because for some reason we get the little things. But anyway, so just keep that in mind as you're looking up at the night sky. There's a lot more than what you might think. Okay, let's turn our attention over to the northeast. I'm going to zoom us out just a little bit. Because up in the northeast sky is what I refer to as the Fall Greek Tragedy. There are 5 constellations over here that are all involved in the same story that is, I guess, a bit of a spoiler, kind of a tragedy. But let me introduce you to those. So, first off, if we look over in the northeast, about at the same height as the Little Dipper, you'll notice that there is this W in the sky. Now, for the Greeks, this is the Queen Cassiopeia. The way I picture her, which is slightly different than the way this program draws her, but I picture her as the star that I've highlighted here is her head, and she's sitting in a throne, and we're getting a profile view. So we have her head, her back, upper legs, and big long clown feet. And that is our queen. And then just up and to the left, we have her husband, the King Cepheus. He is a square with a triangle attached to him. Kind of looks like a house that's upside down this time of year. But this is his throne, so this would be the top of his throne, so his head would be here. He's upside down right now. And this would be like where the armrests would be, and then the legs down here. So that is our queen and king. And again, this program draws it a little bit differently than how I was taught it and how I depict it. But that just goes to show there's a lot of leeway and flexibility when it comes to making these pictures out of the stars. Because as you can see, you have to use your imagination for a lot of these. I mean, I turned a W into a woman. Like, you gotta use some imagination. So our king and queen here, they have a daughter, the Princess Andromeda. The way we can find her is by taking the rightmost part of the W of Cassiopeia and Cepheus's head, and this turns into an arrow. And this arrow is going to point us to this line right here. And this is the belt of Andromeda. And so we have her head, her body, her legs, and then her arms are outstretched. And so that's right there is Andromeda. Now, before I get into the story very quickly, you'll notice this line that forms her belt. One of these doesn't look quite like a star. It's a little bit fuzzy. That's because it's not a star. that fuzzy little blob that you're seeing there is the Andromeda Galaxy, named such because it's in the constellation of Andromeda. It is the closest major galaxy to us at about 2.5 million light years away. So a light year is the distance that light travels in 1 year. It's equivalent to about 6 trillion miles, and it's 2.5 million light years away. It's very far away. But we can see it with your naked eye. You'd see that little faint smudgy blob in the sky if you have dark enough skies. So it's really cool that you can actually see an entirely separate galaxy with just your eyes. Of course, if you have a telescope, just like me zooming in here, you'll be able to see a little bit more detail, but there you go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start our story, and then we will introduce the last two characters. So we have, oops, I don't know what I just touched. Let me turn that grid off. We don't need that. Okay. So we have our Queen Cassiopeia, our King Cepheus. They are rulers over what's now known as Ethiopia. They have their daughter Andromeda, but the king and queen are not good rulers. They don't really care about the people in their kingdom. They really only care about themselves. They're known to just be absolutely horrible to the people in their kingdom. And on top of all that, they are incredibly vain, to the point where one day they declared that Cassiopeia was the most beautiful being in the universe, even more so than the gods and goddesses, which is really not something you say unless you want to anger the gods and goddesses. And that's what happens. So they showed up, and at first, the gods and goddesses were like, look, just take it back. We'll forget this happened. Just say you're not. But Cassiopeia and Cepheus refused, and instead doubled down and was like, no, because I'm more beautiful than you. This really angered the gods and goddesses, so they sent a giant sea monster to attack their kingdom. Now, while Cassiopeia and Cepheus didn't care about the people in their kingdom, they did care about their possessions and their great castle, and they didn't want that to get destroyed. So they had an idea. Maybe they could offer a sacrifice. So they chained their dear daughter Andromeda up to a rock in the middle of the ocean in the hopes that the sea monster would take her and leave the kingdom alone. And so Andromeda is now there, chained up on this rock, screaming for help as the sea monster heads her way. Now, here's where we introduce our last two characters, because thankfully for Andromeda, our hero was in the area at the time. So our next character we're going to introduce is Perseus. So to find him, the easiest thing to do is to find that W of Cassiopeia and just go down until you get to the next group of stars. And this is Perseus. And there he is. You'll notice in this depiction, and in most depictions of him, he is carrying a severed head. This is the head of Medusa. Medusa is a gorgon, a monster. She has snakes for hair and these powers where if you look her in the eye, you turn to stone. And so this is kind of Perseus's claim to fame. He's the guy who killed Medusa. Now, Perseus is not alone. With him is his faithful companion, his winged horse, Pegasus. And this is, without a doubt, my favorite constellation. So it starts over here at Andromeda's head, and we go up and across and down and across. Yes, that is in fact a square. And that is supposed to represent the winged horse of Pegasus. In some depictions, there are some other stars added to try and represent like a head and the front legs, but he's still missing his back half. It's another example of really needing imagination when trying to form these pictures in the stars. But back to our story. Perseus has slain Medusa. He's on Pegasus. They're flying back home when he hears these cries for help. He looks down. He sees Andromeda chained to the rock, the sea monster heading her way, and decides to try and help her. And with some very clever thinking, remembers that he has the head of Medusa. So he very carefully pulls it out, being careful not to look at it or point it towards Andromeda. And instead, he points it at the sea monster, who looks Medusa in the eye, turns to stone, and sinks down to the bottom of the ocean. And that frees Perseus to fly down and unchain Andromeda. They both hop up on Pegasus and fly off to live happily ever after. Now, if you remember, I called this a tragedy. That's because our story isn't over. That has still left our king and queen without being punished. So, what the gods decided to do was to chain the two of them up in the night sky, and they orient them so that they can no longer look at each other and therefore can't really bask in their beauty or indulge in their vanity ever again. And that is how our king and queen ended up in the sky. They are chained there for eternity as their punishment. All right. We are going to make our way over to, I'm trying to find it. This is the problem with this program. Sometimes I also get lost, which is completely fine. And the good thing is when you do this yourself, if you decide to do the program, you can just click the button and all of the constellations turn on. I have that feature turned off right now so that I can highlight specific constellations. Is that the one I'm looking for? Are you what I'm looking for? Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. So Saturn right now is currently over in, and let me just get a little bit later into the night because I think that's part of the problem. Saturn over here, and let me turn these lines off real quick. Saturn over here is in this triangle shape of stars. Let me go ahead and reset it. This triangle shape of stars. And this triangle is Capricornus, which is half goat, half fish. Let me go ahead and turn that art on. So the point of the triangle is the fishtail, and then the wide part of the triangle is the goat head and body. So this is Capricornus. It's probably one of, I think, the weirdest of the Greek constellations, although I say that, and there is a head of hair that's a constellation. It's a really faint one and hard to find, and I don't know it. I just know that it exists. But there is a decent story to explain this very, very weird creature. So this is the goat god Pan, who started out full goat. Such a strange sentence to say. He started out full goat, and he was battling one of the Greek titans. Now, in this fight, he started to lose. And so he wanted to try and run away and escape. And so he ran and ran and ran, but the Titan kept chasing him. And the further he ran, the more and more tired he got, but the Titan kept chasing, so he had to keep going. Eventually, he reached the ocean and decided to jump in and start swimming, hoping that the Titan couldn't swim. Unfortunately, he could, and started swimming after him. Well, at this point, he is getting very tired. The Titan is gaining on him, but thankfully, Zeus saw what was going on, and changed the back half of Pan into a fishtail so that he could finally swim fast enough to get away from the Titan and escape. And that is how you end up with a half fish, half goat in your night sky. It's an interesting one. All right, now over in the southwest, we are finally starting to see our three bright stars that make up the summer triangle start to set over in the west once it gets dark. So we have Altair, Vega, and Deneb, which makes up the summer triangle. I have been talking about these for months since they have been up since the summer. So if you're interested in learning more about the Summer Triangle, go check out one of our constellation shows from back in the summer. You can find all of our past live streams in the video section of our Facebook page or over on our YouTube channel. So yeah, we are finally starting to say goodbye to our Summer Triangle in the night sky. But that also means over in the east, we are starting to say hello to some of our winter constellations because, whether we like it or not, winter is just around the corner. So to end us off, let's fast forward just a little bit in time and start to see those familiar winter constellations. Now, because we are going to be talking about them for a few months once winter hits, I don't want to go over them too much yet. I want to leave a little bit of anticipation so you'll come back and see us for another constellation show. But to give you a little bit of a preview, we have 6 very prominent constellations up in the winter sky that are bright and beautiful and easy to find, and they also have some little hidden treasures in them as well. So definitely come back and see us for a winter constellation show if you want to hear more about those. So with that, let's fast forward time here again. We'll see those stars continuing to rise up in the east. Not long before sunrise, we are starting to see spring constellations because that is the season after winter. And then we have our sun hopping up and we are into the daytime. Okay. Is Deneb circumpolar in Duluth? I think it's close. I haven't actually checked. I think it's close. Okay, with that, so you had a question about where the North Pole star, or how close the North Pole was to Polaris back 1000 BC? Is that what it was? Yeah, 600 to 1000 BC. Okay, so to give a little context to this, we know of Polaris as our North Star, but it isn't always our North Star. So there it is, right there. Because Earth wobbles like a top, Polaris is our North Star right now because that is the direction that our North Pole points. It points right next to Polaris. In fact, I can turn on the celestial poles. So you can see that Earth's North Pole points right next to where Polaris is, which is why we see it as the North Star that doesn't move. But because Earth's axis wobbles, our North Pole isn't always pointing directly at Polaris. Over about a 26,000 year cycle, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, over a 26,000 year cycle, our North Celestial Pole actually circles the sky. So in about 13,000 years, that pole is going to be near the star Vega, which will be close to being the North Star at the time. So you specifically wanted to look at, how do I do BC? This is Gregorian. Can I go back from, I can. Okay, cool. So let's just go back 1,000 years. And so at that time period, the North Celestial Pole was down here, which was a decent chunk away from where Polaris is. So at that time, they could not use Polaris as the North Star, as the navigating star. In fact, you see that even back like in the year 500 AD, you see that it's not right at the North Star. Instead, what a lot of the navigators did, they used the entire Little Dipper as their kind of navigation tool. If you find the Little Dipper, then you know the direction of north. And it's just over the years that we've gotten closer and closer to Polaris. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, it shows the power of this program. It can show you, like I said, the sky from any date, time, and location. So if you want to do something like this and go back to see what the sky looked like in Egypt at the time of the ancient Egyptians, you could do that and see what sky they were working with. In fact, you'll find that the North Star at that time was actually the star Thuban, which is in the constellation of Draco. So lots of cool stuff that you can do here. All right. Well, let me switch us back over. There we go. So I think we're going to start wrapping it up now. But if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and put them down in the comments. We'll take a couple minutes to see if there are any other questions. But in the meantime, let me tell you what you can expect over the next week from us. So for our in-person shows here in Duluth, Friday we're going to be showing Expedition Moons. Saturday we have our family show at 2 p.m. is Polaris, the Space Submarine, and the Mystery of the Polar Night. And that evening we have From Earth to the Universe. And then you can join us back here on Facebook next Wednesday for our Ask an Astronomer show, where we are here to answer your questions and talk about fun current events in astronomy.
So we keep getting the same question about where would on December 5th the moon will occult with Uranus again, and where will this be visible in North America? I was trying to look it up during the live stream. I couldn't find an exact place, like where it would be visible from is the thing. So
I don't know off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, I can find anything. So my apologies.
Yeah.
Probably not gonna find out till a little bit sooner.
Yeah, and that's something that maybe I'll make a note of, and I can do it in our December What's Up show, since that'll happen before that date. So yeah, I think we had a cat on a computer or on a keyboard. Do you see that?
Yeah, I see it. I see
it. Love that. I am definitely guilty of having that happen when Nova is on my desk.
Oh, it happens. I know.
Oh yeah.
I know it well. I know it well.
All right then. Well, I think we will wrap it up there thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, everyone. And smiling and waiting.